Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 10 of Information and Communication Technologies, and in this lecture I'm going to explain fundamental concepts about computer and network security. These are the lecture contents. In this lecture we will get an understanding about different kinds of computer threats. These threats employ certain dangers to the users, hardware, and the data in the computer systems. And the special branch which deals with the computer network security is often termed as cyber crimes. These are the crimes which are executed using computer technology. Then we will discuss more about the internal threats that are planted using different kinds of viruses or malwares. So these threats can target a computer single-handedly, or these can be employed over a network or using the internet services. So before moving forward, we must comprehend a rudimentary definition of computer system threats. So a threat can be anything that can cause harm to the user, to the hardware, or to the information. So in the context of computer security, a threat can be a burglar, it can be a virus, it can be a natural catastrophe such as an earthquake or a simple user error. So the entire point of computer security is to eliminate or protect against threats. So these threats often target the end users in terms of economic or social or in some cases an emotional burden onto the end users. So whenever there are some threats, you must have some security mechanism to protect against those threats. So these threats can be exploited or enhanced if your system has some vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are generally weaknesses in your security in any system. So vulnerability is a weakness that can have certain implications to damage the data, damage the hardware, or in some cases it can damage the end users. So a vulnerability that is anything that has not been protected against threats, making it open to the harm. Therefore, security attempts to neutralize these threats. So there are various kinds of threats, and we will start exploring by some of the common threats which are targeted to end users. And one of the common threats is the identity theft. So identity theft has been in use before the computer age, but computer technology has helped the identity theft fraud to its height. So identity theft is impersonation by private information to obtain documents and credit in your name. So there are many reported incidents around the globe. So there are many methods to steal the information so that a user can impersonate another user to gain access to certain valuable information. One of the common method is shoulder surfing. That means you can extract information by watching or by extracting information using some hidden means of communication. So it can be simple watching someone entering a personal identification information such as a password for a private transaction, such as using an ATM machine. So observing users typing their login credentials, credit card or calling card numbers into IT equipment is located in public places. Another method is to do some snagging. Snagging information is by listening onto the telephone extension through a wiretap or over a call wall while the victim gives information to a legitimate agent. And one of the difficult method is the dumpster diving. That means thieves can go through the garbage cans, dumpsters or trash bins to obtain the cancelled checks, credit card numbers or bank account numbers of someone. Rummaging through the rubbish for personal information is the dumpster diving. However, one of the most widely used method in identity theft is the social engineering. So in social engineering, an identity thief tricks the victim to provide critical information at the pretext of something legitimate. So it is the art of manipulating people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. So it involves trickery or deception for the purpose of information gathering, fraud, or computer system access. In most cases, the attacker never comes face to face with the victims. So one of this social engineering has been quite prominently used in our society when these kinds of attackers call you over the telephone and ask about your bank information, impersonating that they are calling from the bank. And an illiterate user or an unaware user may provide such confidential information to the attacker using this social engineering method, and they can exploit these information to gain financial values. So you must be very well aware of this method. So next time any attacker or any masquerader attempts to gain your personal information, you should avoid sharing the personal information, such as no one should be allowed to access your PIN. So that is personal identification number. So it stands for the personal, therefore you should limit it to yourself and you should not share it with anybody else. So another method to target the user is using the high tech method. So which is the sophisticated identity thief can get information using a computer or internet connection. So they can install some Trojan software to plant on your system. This can be done using skimming of the information from bank or credit card using compromised or handheld credit card readers or creating clone cards. So this uses using contactless credit card readers to acquire the data wirelessly from the RFID enabled passports. So it is a very high-tech and advanced standard, and only few people are willing to use these technologies. Therefore, you are about uh, 80 to 70% safe from these high-tech methods. So it can get it can employ different methods, such as someone can advertise a bogus job offer in order to accumulate resumes and applications, typically disclosing applicants' names, home and email addresses, telephone numbers, and sometimes their banking details. So apart from the identity theft, another common threat to the user is the loss of privacy using cookies and other software. So the attacker, or in some cases organizations, usually get the information about the user by planting some cookies onto the user device. So there are different kinds of tools that can be used to get the private information about the user. So a common method is to use the spyware. These are softwares downloaded to a computer designed to record personal information. So it can track the computer user's activities and report them to someone else. So typically, undesired software hidden from the users are classified as spyware. Another common term for the spyware is the adware, which is internet advertising that is a common source of spyware. So you can also have some web bugs. These are small GIF format image files embedded in a web page or an HTML format email, and behind that tiny image there lies a code that functions in much the same way as a cookie, allowing the bug creator to track many of the your online activities. So a bug can record what web pages you view, it can record the keywords you type into a search engine, and it can record personal information that you enter in a form on a web page and other data. Another method is to use the spam email. So a spam is an internet junk email. So it is an unsolicited commercial email, and almost all spam is commercial advertising. So you often encounter with such emails where you are posted with certain advantages or to you are posted to buy certain products at a very low rate. So networks and PCs need a spam blocker, and that is required to stop the spam before reaching the inbox. So spammers acquire addresses using many methods, such as they can pay an organization or record the email addresses entered at a particular website. Nowadays, it is very difficult to avoid the loss of privacy if you are an active user on the internet, because your all of the personal information is stored electronically, and whenever you make transactions on the internet, those transactions are stored in a database. And whenever you are dealing with any organization, that organization contains some profiling about you, and they have some data about you. So these organizations want to make the profit, therefore they want to sell their the data of the customers so that the advertising companies can send targeted ads to such users. Therefore, data is sold to other companies, and there are also public records onto the internet, and there are many posts or information that you post publicly which is accessible to many other users, and those users can get the information and then sell it for other purposes. So overall, the internet use is monitored and logged. That means any activity you perform onto the internet, it is recorded somewhere around the globe. So monitoring activity can be carried out on your computer or an connected server. So data about when you visited, what you looked at, and how long you stayed is used by most commercial websites, often termed as online profiling. So if you look at these techniques, these are uh, acceptable techniques. That means you are willingly participating and agreeing to the terms and conditions of the websites before going through this step. Therefore, none of these techniques are illegal. And finally, the cookies are used to track the information. Cookies are named after the magic cookie, which is a small text file that a web server asks your browser to place in onto your computer. So cookies contain information that identifies your computer, that is your IP address, your email name, so your username and email address, and information about your visit to the website. So files are delivered from the website and originally improved. Uh, these are designed to originally improve the website's function. And cookies now can track history and the passwords. So second kinds of threats target the hardware itself. These affect the operation or reliability of the computer systems. And these threats are divided in further subdomains. And three of them are listed here, which are quite common. The first one are the power related threats. That means an attacker can employ power fluctuations. That means the high voltage power or uh, taking out all of the voltage can damage the computer systems, which can eventually result in the loss of data. Another kind of threat to the hardware is the actual theft or vandalism of the computer hardware. In the real world, thieves can steal the entire computer system or a server to obtain all of the information. So it can also get into an accidental or intentional damage. Therefore, you should employ certain measures to secure your computer system, such as keeping the system in a secure area and keeping the servers or mainframe computers in a locked server room. And you should not uh, sit or use daily activities near the precious computers which can contain your information. And you have to handle the equipment with care, and if there is a theft, you can chase away the loiterers. Hardware can be impacted by the natural disasters. Disasters differ by location and typically result in a total loss, and you should employ a disaster planning depending upon the area. So you must be aware of the possible disaster whenever you are placing a system in a specific area, and you have to anticipate the disasters when conditions are right, and you have to plan for the recovery. And you should also practice all plans beforehand so that in the disaster you are well prepared so that your systems are safe from the disasters. So you can use different countermeasures, such as you can use different surge suppressors, line conditioners, uninterruptible power supplies, and generators to back up your systems. So there are different kinds of natural disasters, and if your system has the critical information, you should ensure that you should have mechanisms to secure your system from such disasters. So disasters can be a natural disaster such as a flood, lightning storm, an earthquake, hurricane, or some snowstorm. It can be a site disaster such as a building or forest fires, some water emergencies, telephone or cable service interruptions, or some explosions in the building. There can be some civil disasters such as some crash so that your system is interrupted, some civil disturbance, or a disease outbreak and quarantine. So eventually all the threats to the user or to the hardware are actually the threats to the data, because data is the fundamental concept of the computer systems, and it is the most serious form of the threat because data is the reason for the computers, and the data is very difficult to replace, and often the protection of the data and the information is quite difficult because there are a variety of attacks that can be employed to target the data integrity, availability, and accessibility. And these attacks involve some malware, viruses, and malicious programs. Therefore, a term computer crime is invented, which is any illegal activity that acts as involving a computer, including the theft of financial assets, manipulating of the data for the personal advantage, and act of sabotaging or using a computer, such as releasing a virus, shutting down a web service. So these activities are also coined as cyber crimes. So most commonly these activities are created on the internet using the internet fraud, which is the most common cyber crime. There are many fraudulent websites and they have the similar names to the legitimate sites, and even users can impersonate an illegal user by impersonating a legitimate user. Similarly, you can create a distributed denial of service attack which attempts to stop the public server, and hackers plant the code onto the computer and code is simultaneously lodged and too many requests stop the server. So there are different categories and nitty-gritty details in the cyber crimes, and there are key terms and definitions that we must be aware of to deal with these cyber crimes. And one of the common term in the cybercrime is a hacker. A hacker refers to someone who accesses the computer or network illegally, and hacker is someone who hacks the computer system to breach the security and to improve the security. Because some hackers are ethical, therefore they claim that they want to break the system so that the system can be improved to such attacks. On the other hand, the similar term for the hacker whose intention is not to improve the security is called a cracker. Cracker is someone who accesses a computer or network illegally but has the intent of destroying the data, stealing information, and other malicious actions. So both hackers and crackers have advanced computer and network skills. So some are simply script kiddies, which has the same intent as a cracker but does not have the technical skills and knowledge, and they use often pre-written hacking and cracking programs to break into the computers. The more corporate term is the corporate spies that have an excellent computer and networking skills to break into the specific computer and steal the proprietary data and information, or to help them identify the security risk in their own organizations. On the other hand, some companies also hire the corporate spies, which is a practice known as a corporate espionage. That means to gain the competitive advantage over the uh, competitive organizations. Cybercrimes also involve some unethical employees which may break into the employer's computer for a variety of reasons, such as someone simply want to exploit the security weakness, others may seek the financial gains from selling the confidential information. Some disgruntled employees may want revenge from the employers. Some are cyber extortionists. These are the persons who uses email as a vehicle for extortion, and it is a common method in today's environment. So these people or organizations send a threatening email message indicating they will expose confidential information or exploit a security flaw or launch an attack that will compromise the organization's network if they are not paid the sum of money. So these are often bluffing because they may have got some information from one of your passwords, and they claim that they have your other passwords. So you must be very well aware that whenever you encounter such kinds of email from a cyber extortionist, you should change the passwords and ignore the email, because most of the times they do not have the knowledge or the skill to get the information about you from other websites. The most lethal kind is the cyber terrorist. The cyber terrorist is someone who uses the internet or network to destroy or damage the computers for political reasons. They might target the nation's air traffic control system, electricity generating companies, or a telecommunication infrastructure. Cyber warfare describes an attack whose goal ranges from disabling a government's computer network to a crippling country. Both cyber-terrorism and cyber warfare are usually require a team of highly skilled individuals, millions of dollars, and several years of planning. On the other hand, simple attacks such as malware, a virus, or a malicious program can target the integrity of the data. A malware describes the virus, worm, trojan, horse, attack applets, and attack scripts. These virulent programs represent the most common threat to your information. So a Trojan horse is a program that poses as a beneficial software. That means it lies in a legal software. That means if you install a legal application, a Trojan horse may be embedded within that application and acts as a legal program but exploits the security weaknesses. On the other hand, worms are the particular attacks to the network, spreading to other machines or any network you are connected, and you're carrying out programmed attacks on the computers. Attack scripts are specifically written usually by expert programmers to exploit the internet. Virus is a common term, which is the piece of a computer program that attaches themselves to the host programs. These are the software that distributes and installs itself. And it ranges from annoying uh, options to catastrophic actions in your computer system. So to overcome these problems, you must install an updated antivirus software. You must have a proper blocker and do not open unknown email links and web pages. So this diagram shows how a malware can infect our computer system. It is just one example and it can be carried out using several methods. So usually a malware delivers its payload onto the computer in a variety of ways. When a user opens an infected file, runs an infected program, boots a computer with infected removable media such as a USB or a other plugged device into a port. It can be carried to a computer or infects a computer if you connect to an unprotected computer network and when a certain condition or event occurs such as computer's clock changing to a specific date. So it can attack using when a user opening an infected attachment. So the process is depicted here. So there are some conditions that you should be well aware to understand that the system is under attack, and many common ways to comprehend this information are listed here. So an infected computer has one or more of the following symptoms, such as an operating system runs much slower than the usual. You must comprehend that there are some discrepancies between the actual performance and actual results. So usually it runs out the memory, file becomes corrupted, screen displays unusual messages or some unusual sounds. Some programs and files may disappear and unknown programs and files may appear. And most of the time operating systems does not start up and shut down unexpectedly. Therefore, you should secure your system from such conditions and attacks. And these attacks can cause significant harm to the computer system, to the data, and to the user itself. So a typical example is provided here, that are the harms done by a virus. Also, a virus can copy themselves to the other programs and the areas of the disk, therefore they can corrupt the hard disk or the data located onto the disk. So these replicate themselves as rapidly and frequently as possible, filling up the infected system's disk and memory, rendering the system as useless. They can display information onto the screen. They can modify, corrupt, and destroy selected files, erase the contents of the entire disk, and usually they lie dormant for a specific time or until a given condition is met and then become active. Usually they open a backdoor to the infected system that allows someone else to access and even take control of the system through network or internet connection. So here are some categories of viruses that you must be aware of to handle these in your systems. So common type is the bimodal, bipartite or multipartite viruses. So these can infect both files and boot sector of the disk. Some viruses are termed as time bombs, which hide in the victim's disk and wait until the specific date and time before running. There are some logic bombs, much similar to the time bombs, but these are dependent upon some logic, and they are activated by a date or change the file or particular action taken by a user or a program. Some viruses are stealth viruses. These take up the residence in the computer memory, making them hard to detect, and they can conceal changes they make to the other files, hiding the damage from the user and the operating system. Common type is the email viruses. These are transmitted using email messages sent across the private networks or the internet. Some email viruses are transmitted as an infected attachment, a document file or a program that is attached to the message. Therefore, you must be very well aware to not open such emails which come from untrusted persons such as spammers. Some are boot sector viruses which definitely will target the boot of your operating system. And these are most hostile types of viruses infecting the boot sector, moving the boot sector data to a different part of the disk. When the computer is started, the virus copies itself into the memory where it can hide and infect other disks. Some viruses live in the clusters and they can change a disk file system. These cause the viruses to run with programs, creating the illusion that the virus has infected every program onto the disk. Some viruses infect files and programs files onto the disk, such as exe or q.com files. So when an infected program is launched, the virus code is also executed. Some viruses are macroviruses. These are designed to infect a specific type of document files such as Microsoft Word or Excel files. So these can do various levels of damage to the data, from corrupting the document to the deleting of the data. Some viruses are polymorphic, self-kernelling, self-encrypting, or self-changing viruses. So these can change itself each time it is copied, making it difficult to isolate. So you can employ several steps to block the threats, and these steps are referred as countermeasures. So you can protect the data from the theft by regularly backing up your data to a more secure place to countermeasure against the theft of the data loss. You can protect the system itself from the theft by placing a firewall, which is a countermeasure against the hackers. In general, you can employ two different classes of countermeasures. The first one shields the user from the personal harm such as threat to personal property, confidential information, financial records, medical records, and so forth. The second class safeguards the and protects the computer system from physical hazards such as theft, vandalism, power problems, and natural disasters or attacks onto the data stored and processed in computers. However, no countermeasure is 100% effective all of the time, so a truly dedicated attacker will eventually break through any security. So in general, you can use different precautionary measures to safeguard against malware. That means you should not start a computer with the removable media inserted in the drives or plugged into the ports. You should never open email attachment unless you are expecting the attachment and it is from a trusted source. So you set the macro security level so that the application software warns the user that a document they are attempting to open contains a macro. So this can be set using the security setting of your operating system, or you can install a antivirus or anti-malware software. So the next step is to install an antivirus program and update it frequently. So how an antivirus program protects your system from the microvirus? Usually you can do it by setting a macro security level in application that allows you to write macros. So at medium security, warning displays that a document contains a macro. Macros are instructions saved in an application such as word processing or spreadsheet. So antivirus is a program that hinders the effectiveness of the viruses. So how does it do that? It usually records the information about the program such as the file size and creation date. It uses information to detect if a virus tampers with the file and it attempts to remove any detected viruses. Usually it quarantines infected files that it cannot remove so that these files are kept in a separate area of the hard disk until the infection can be removed. It also ensures other files will not be affected. So users can also quarantine suspicious files themselves. Quarantined files remain on your computer until you delete them or restore them. So you can restore a quarantined file only if you are certain that the antivirus program has removed the infection from the quarantined file. So you can relate this situation with the quarantine of the COVID-19 virus. So you will see that all the quarantine mechanism is employed for the viruses in the computer systems and viruses in the natural world. So in the extreme cases, you may need to reformat the hard disk to remove the malware from an infected computer. So having uninfected or clean backups of all the file is important. So you must practice some safety measures to prevent viruses and malwares attacking your system beforehand. So users can take several precautions to protect their home and work computers and mobile devices from these malicious infections. So you must stay informed about the new virus alerts in the virus boxes. A virus hoax is an email message that warns the user of a non-existent virus or other malware. Often these hoaxes are in the form of chain letters that request the user to send a copy of the email message to as many people as possible. So instead of forwarding the message, visit a website that publishes a list of virus alerts and virus hoaxes. So these are the tips that you should follow for preventing viruses and other viruses. That means you should never start a computer with removable media, never open email attachments, set the micro level security, install an antivirus, scan all downloaded programs, and if your program flags an email attachment as infected, delete it or couldn't eat it, and before using any removable media, scan it and install a personal firewall program and stay informed about the new viruses. Some of the advanced attacks are created and spreaded through the internet and networks. And the common method is to use the bot networks. In short, a bot network is a group of compromised computers connected to a network. A compromised computer is known as a zombie, which uh, uh, is one whose owner is unaware the computer is being controlled by another remote user. Onto the computer or compromised computer, the criminals usually install a bot, which is a program that performs a repetitive task onto the network. So these criminals install malicious bots on unprotected computers to create a bot net, also called the also called a zombie army. So the attacker then uses the botnet to send spam via emails. It can spread viruses and other malware, or to commit a distributed denial of service attack. So a denial of service attack disrupts the computer access to the internet services such as web or email. So distributed denial of service attack, in which the zombie army is used to attack computers or computer networks. The damage caused by a distributed denial of service attack or simply denial of service attack usually is extensive. So another internet common attack is setting up a backdoor program, which sets the instruction in a program that allows the user to bypass the security control when accessing the program, computer, or network. So when an attacker can access to the unsecure computer, they can often install a backdoor or to modify an existing program to include the backdoor, which allows them to continue access to the computer remotely without the user's knowledge. So a rootkit can be a backdoor. So some worms can leave backdoors which have been used to spread other worms or to distribute junk emails from unsuspecting victim computers. So you can also use the spoofing attack, which is a technique in which intruders use to make the network or internet transmission appear legitimate. So an IP spoofing often occurs when intruder computers fool the network into believing it's IP security from trusted software or trusted source. Perpetrators of IP spoofing trick their victims into interacting with a phony website. Therefore, information transmitted over the network has a higher degree of security risk than the information kept on an organization's premises. And online security service is usually quite helpful, which is a website that evaluates your computer to check for internet and email vulnerabilities. Common examples are McAfee, Avast, and Semantic antiviruses. These antiviruses identify and remove computer viruses, and most also protect against worms and Trojan horses. These include virus signatures and virus definitions, which are specific patterns of virus code. And you should update your antivirus program's signatures files regularly. And finally, you can install a firewall to block all the information entering and exiting your computer or your network. So firewall is a hardware or in some cases software protects our network resources from intrusion. So organizations use firewalls to protect network resources from outsiders and to restrict employees' access to sensitive data. Usually, large organizations often route all their communication through a proxy server, which typically is a component of a firewall. So, a proxy server is a server outside the organization's network that controls which communication passes through the organization's network. So proxy server uses a variety of screening techniques. Some check for the domain name or IP address of the message for legitimacy. Others require that the messages have the digital signatures. So this concludes today's lecture about the network and computer security. However, this is a very vast topic and it affects our life on daily basis. Therefore, if you want to read more about the topic, you can go through the recommended books or you can search the internet for further and updated information about the current attacks to the users, hardware, and the data. And if you have any question, you can ask. Thank you very much.